Nishant, a 26-year-old teacher, found himself in an unimaginable situation. He was cornered and could do little to escape until dawn. The exact details of what happened that night remain unclear, but by morning, Nishant realized he was still being held against his will. Fearful and outnumbered, he didn't dare resist. What made things worse was the group's leverage. They had recorded everything from the previous night. They threatened to share the footage with the school principal and other teachers where Nishant worked, a prospect that filled him with shame and dread. Knowing the damage such exposure could cause to his reputation and career, Nishant reluctantly gave in to their demands, feeling trapped and powerless against their manipulation. Hi there, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into another shocking real-life story, one of those cases that leaves you questioning how these things even happen. This time, the story takes us to Patna, a city in the state of Bihar, India. Disclaimer: this story is being shared purely for discussion and awareness, with no intention of targeting or disrespecting any particular institution. Now, let's set the stage. This story involves a private school, a charismatic and handsome teacher, and a web of manipulation that left him trapped in an unimaginable situation. He found himself caught in the schemes of a student's guardian, a situation so twisted that he couldn't go home for days and was forced to comply under threats and promises. What exactly happened? How did things spiral out of control? Let's break it all down and uncover the full story. Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you enjoy this story, be sure to share it with your friends. It really helps us out. Now, let's get into it. This story takes place in Patna, a city in the state of Bihar, India. Patna, located in northern India, has a population of about 1.8 million, according to the 2005 census. The focus of our story is a young man named Nishant, born in 1992 in Chhapra. Nishant was known for being smart, obedient, and polite. A bit of a quiet type who wouldn't dare argue with anyone older than him. People close to him often described him as innocent and respectful. In 2010, Nishant received a scholarship to study education at Patna College. He graduated 4.5 years later and briefly worked as a tutor in the capital before landing a job as a reserve teacher at an elementary school in Patna. He taught foreign language subjects and served as a deputy guidance teacher. This was a big step for Nishant, but his studies had prepared him well for this profession. At first, adjusting to the large number of students and the new environment was challenging for him. But by January 2016, Nishant had settled in and become a beloved teacher, especially among the parents who frequently came to pick up their kids. The school itself had a reputation for being one of the more expensive ones in the area, offering top-notch facilities and a quality teaching staff. The principal believed Nishant's fresh perspective and creativity brought new energy to the school, especially since many of the other teachers were older. Nishant quickly gained a strong following among students and parents alike. His teaching style was engaging, easy to follow, and made learning fun. Students found his classes exciting, and Nishant had a knack for sparking curiosity. Kids began to excel in their subjects and genuinely enjoyed coming to school. By September 2016, Nishant was recognized by the school foundation and parents for his exceptional contributions to the school, a moment that came as a pleasant surprise for the young teacher. Despite his passion for teaching, Nishant's income was modest. As a new teacher and not yet a civil servant, he often found himself running out of money before the end of the month. To make ends meet, the school gave him permission to take on private tutoring outside of school hours. That's when a parent named Adya approached Nishant. She hired him to tutor her 5th grade daughter, an 11-year-old student at the school whose name hasn't been disclosed. Nishant taught her English and other subjects as needed, holding lessons twice a week in the evenings. The arrangement worked out well. Adya's daughter made noticeable progress under Nishant's guidance, excelling in her studies and rapidly improving her knowledge. For Adya, it was money well spent. Nishant proved to be an excellent tutor just as he was in the classroom. If we take a closer look at Adya's family, her husband, Pranav, works in the mining industry. He rarely comes home due to his demanding job, but his hefty paycheck provides significant financial support for the family. However, his emotional weakness lies in his inability to show affection to his wife. This leaves Adya feeling neglected, as she almost never experiences the warmth of his care. Enter Nishant. He visits Adya's home twice a week, bringing a sense of vitality and companionship into her life. His conversations are engaging, and there's a natural connection between them that she rarely experiences elsewhere. In their area, clear-headed, ambitious individuals are hard to come by. Most of the private tutors are older women or men, as the younger generation tends to migrate to bigger cities in search of better job opportunities or to chase fame. Nishant stands out as someone young and courageous, dedicating his life to education, a rare quality, especially for someone who isn't a government employee. His presence feels like a breath of fresh air, breaking the monotony of Adya's routine and the norms of their community. Until February 2017, in fact, when he finished teaching at Ms. Adya's house and was chatting late into the night, she began to dare to let her hand travel down Nishant's knee to his thigh. At first she refused, the next day she still refused, and then with the promise of a sizable amount of extra money, he finally agreed. He confessed that he had never been in a relationship in his life. He was nervous as Adya's hands roamed around his thighs. The 36-year-old woman tried to calm him down, saying, "Relax and take it easy. Later the tutoring money will be doubled." Even though his body was shaking violently because this was the first time a woman had touched him, Nishant finally wanted to give up his virginity, and Adya's mother finally became the first person to taste her son's tutor's virginity, even though she looked confused and stiff. But Nishant seemed to enjoy it. He only advised that no one knew about it, let it be a secret with Adya's mother, embarrassed because he was a teacher by profession and the worst thing could be fired. Adya's mother also promised about this secret relationship. 2 weeks later, the woman asked Nishant again, but this time he refused. However, the following week, she persisted, and Nishant reluctantly gave in after she threatened to report him to the principal if he declined. Little did Nishant know, during the first encounter, Adya had secretly recorded everything on her phone, a decision that would later haunt him. Initially, Nishant had only been curious about what it would feel like to give in to such an invitation. But now, things had spiraled out of control. Adya grew bolder with each passing day. Whenever she came to pick up her son at school, she'd wink at him or pinch his waist, leaving him feeling uncomfortable and nervous. He feared being seen by other teachers or worse, by students who might report it to their parents or the school administration. Even though Nishant tried to distance himself, Adya wouldn't back down. She kept calling, sending flirtatious messages, and even sharing provocative photos that crossed every boundary. Once, the principal subtly warned Nishant, "Be cautious about interacting too closely with the parents. It can lead to trouble." That brief remark was enough to shake him. By August 2017, Nishant had reached his limit. He decided to quit tutoring altogether, citing the increasing workload at school as his reason. When the new school year began, he shut down private lessons entirely. No matter how many requests came in, especially from Adya, he declined them all. He blocked her calls, ignored her messages, and focused on regaining control of his life. It didn't take long for some parents to start complaining. They remembered how, when Nishant first joined, he was friendly, creative, and full of energy. But now, they said, he seemed distant and uninterested, almost arrogant for refusing to offer private lessons. Their children, who once loved studying, were losing motivation, and the school's overall performance was starting to drop. Adding fuel to the fire, Mrs. Adya stirred up frustration among the parents, hinting that they might transfer their children to other schools. If the school isn't improving anymore, what's so hard about offering private lessons again? It's not like they're asking for it for free, she would say, encouraging the dissatisfaction. The principal decided it was time to confront Nishant. In a private chat, she expressed concern about his increasing withdrawal, not just from the parents but also from the students. "You used to be so involved," she said, planning field activities, organizing weekend singing events, even visiting students' homes to encourage their learning. Now, it's like you're hiding in the teacher's room all the time. It stung, but Nishant couldn't argue. The principal even went so far as to suggest that if he didn't start stepping up, They might need to find a new teacher, someone more creative and engaged to take his place. That conversation weighed heavily on Nishant. He couldn't deny it. Ever since the uncomfortable situation with Mrs. Adya, he'd been keeping his distance, losing his enthusiasm for the work he once loved. But now, he realized he couldn't let one incident ruin everything he'd worked for. After much reflection, Nishant made up his mind. He decided to go back to the way he was before, reintroducing after-school programs, bringing back the private lessons, and pouring his energy into making the school thrive again. Not just for his reputation, but for the students who deserved a teacher who cared. Since November 2017, Nishant has started teaching private lessons again, not least to Mrs. Adya's children. Her daughter is already in grade 6 and preparing for her final exams. This time the private lessons are more intense and not only teach English, but discuss questions for almost all subjects, a kind of preparation for the national examination. Several times Mrs. Adya also began to dare to touch, and Nishant did not dare to refuse. Especially Nishant was also afraid that the video with Adya would be reported to the principal. On the other hand, Adya's mother is a guardian of a fairly influential student, allowed the young man to touch, even when transferring money. Nishant was quite happy and began to enjoy her additional work. Mutually beneficial, she thought, although it was horrible, especially when her husband returned from sailing in the new year of January 2018. Nishant was teaching his son. Mrs. Adya liked to flirt with him, horrified if Mr. Pranav saw. Even Nishant could get hit. In early March 2018, when her husband went to work again, Mrs. Adya actually made a surprising offer to Nishant. She and 3 other friends who were also parents of students at the school invited him to have fun for a predetermined fee. They contributed, and she said she would transfer a large amount of money. They invited him to an adult party at a nearby hotel, because the women were fond of Nishant and already knew about his relationship with Adya. Nishant was fuming. He couldn't believe what had just happened. He had trusted Adya when she said their relationship would remain a secret. Yet somehow some of the guardians knew. How? He could already feel the embarrassment creeping in. What if one of them told the principal? The consequences could be disastrous, not just for him but for Adya too. She might even lose her job. It wasn't just personal shame at stake. It could tarnish the school's reputation as well. But Adya remained calm. She reassured Nishant, saying there was no need to worry. Her close circle wasn't known for spilling secrets. "They're not blabbermouths," she said confidently. She even mentioned how they had managed to host some grown-up parties in the past without anyone finding out. Everything would be fine, she insisted. Still, Nishant wasn't convinced. The idea of being outnumbered 1 against 4 felt overwhelming. Seemed risky, reckless even. Yet, after some back and forth, Adya proposed a compromise. They'd meet at a hotel on Saturday. Reluctantly, Nishant agreed. By Sunday evening in March 2018, Nishant found himself walking into the hotel room. Adya was already waiting for him. Things seemed normal at first, but as the night went on, around 10 p.m., Nishant suddenly felt his body go stiff. He couldn't move, and Adya guided him to the bed. Moments later, 3 other women entered the room. Nishant's eyes widened in shock. He recognized them immediately. They were mothers of his students. The women laughed, telling him to relax and not fight back. "We're just here to have fun," one of them teased, assuring him that no one would find out. Adya, along with Sneha, Anjali, and Trisha, began taking charge of the situation. Nishant, a 26-year-old man caught completely off guard, found himself unable to resist. The night unfolded in ways he couldn't have anticipated. By the time morning rolled around, Nishant was exhausted, humiliated, and, worst of all, trapped. The women refused to let him leave. They revealed they had recorded everything that had happened the night before. They made it clear, if he resisted or told anyone, the footage would be sent to the principal and spread among his colleagues. The thought alone was mortifying. Faced with no other option, Nishant reluctantly agreed to their demands. It wasn't just fear of the video. It was the weight of the potential scandal, the fear of losing his job, and the shame that made him comply. Nishant had been feeling exploited for 3 days straight, and he just couldn't take it anymore. Desperate and alone, he decided to go straight to the police to report how these women had treated him. His report was accepted, but the authorities found it a little odd and didn't bother following up. With no solid evidence, everything rested on Nishant's word. Things got even messier when they discovered he'd received a large sum of money. The police started suspecting he might be some kind of hired gun. Word of this reached the school principal, who was completely shocked, especially after reading through Nishant's chat history with Mrs. Adya. But even then, the principal said, "Well, if the police aren't responding, what can we do? Just wait indefinitely?" This left Nishant feeling crushed. No one seemed to believe him. Frustrated and hurt, Nishant transferred the money he'd received back into Adya's account. Her reaction? She laughed in his face, calling him weak, dramatic, and out of touch. "Plenty of men out there would be happy to get paid," she sneered, even threatening to report him to the police herself. Apparently, this kind of thing wasn't unusual for her and her friends. But Nishant wasn't about to let it slide. On a Monday night in March 2018, Nishant showed up for his usual tutoring session with Adya's son. Afterward, in a desperate and reckless move, he climbed to the second floor of their house, went straight into Adya's room, and locked the door behind him. When Adya noticed, she started to speak, saying, "Wait, my son's still asleep at 8. But Nishant didn't wait. He punched her in the face, knocking her down, then pressed a pillow against her face with all his strength. Her face turned blue, and her breathing stopped. To be sure, he grabbed another pillow and held it there for several more minutes until she stopped moving altogether. Nishant quietly left after that. It wasn't long before Adya's son and their housekeeper found her and called for an ambulance. She was pronounced dead at the hospital at just 36 years old. When the authorities investigated, Nishant was arrested and taken into custody. What followed was a whirlwind investigation. The school principal was the only one who truly stood up for Nishant, trying to explain the full story. He showed the police the chat history and even Nishant's initial police report, which had been ignored. With help from Nishant's lawyer, they gathered evidence, like hotel records and surveillance footage, from the night Nishant was allegedly played by Adya and 3 other mothers. The evidence painted a disturbing picture. Hotel staff confirmed a reservation under Adya's name for 4 guests. But witnesses, including the cleaning staff, remembered seeing 5 people, Nishant included. One cleaner even recalled hearing a man screaming from the room but chose to ignore it, not wanting to intrude. 3 days later, the same cleaner saw Nishant crying, saying he was heading to the police station. That's when the cleaner suspected something terrible had happened. In court, things started to unravel. Witnesses and evidence suggested a clear pattern of predatory behavior by Adya and her circle. Even Nishant's parents, heartbroken but steadfast, defended their son. "There's no smoke without fire," they said, insisting that Nishant's actions were a response to unimaginable mistreatment. Ultimately, it all came down to the truth behind Adya's actions, and whether anyone could truly blame Nishant for what he did in the heat of desperation. Eventually, 3 women, Sneha, Anjali, and Trisha, were arrested. When questioned separately, only 2 of them came clean. The third refused to say much until all 3 were brought together. That's when the truth finally came out. They admitted that everything that happened at the hotel had been Adya's idea. According to them, she had told the group that Nishant was easy, strong, tough, and lasted long, which made them curious. Pooling their money, they decided to pay their favorite teacher for the experience. They collected a significant amount, about 6 times Nishant's monthly salary, but transferred only half of it to him. It later came to light that Adya had used a sedative on Nishant during the encounter, making him unable to resist. The 3 women confessed their wrongdoing and accepted responsibility for their actions. After the case went public, another young man came forward in court, claiming he had also been drugged and exploited by the same group of women. He testified that they had spiked his drink and taken advantage of him. As for Nishant, he revealed that he had held a deep grudge against Adya. She had consistently manipulated and threatened him, leaving him terrified. She had also tarnished his reputation, making him an easy target for other guardians who sought to take advantage of him. Despite reporting the abuse to the authorities, Nishant's complaints went nowhere. This led to his fateful decision to confront Adya directly in her home, which tragically ended her life. The police officer who handled Nishant's initial complaint defended his actions, stating that they couldn't proceed without evidence. From the officer's perspective, Nishant had voluntarily gone to the hotel and even accepted money beforehand, which complicated the situation. The officer faced no disciplinary action for dismissing Nishant's report, as his actions were deemed to follow protocol. In September 2018, the case reached its conclusion. A judge at the Patna District High Court found Nishant guilty of taking justice into his own hands. The 27-year-old was sentenced to 8 years in prison, with the possibility of up to 25 years. Sneha, Anjali, and Trisha, meanwhile, were convicted of misconduct and exploitation. Each received 35 months in prison for their actions. What lessons can we learn from this story?